Adrian was a man of consequence. Grandson of the Concord's last king, he carried the weight of a legacy forged in fire and betrayal. His grandfather, a brilliant commander, had carved out victories for the Northern Federation, earning him a swath of the southern riverlands and the title of an equal. But the Federation's leader, consumed by paranoia, had declared him a traitor and annihilated his entire line. Only Adrian, then a boy of 8, had been smuggled to safety by loyal retainers. His childhood was a litany of vengeance. The words "avenge the Concord," "break the Federation" etched into his soul. When the Federation's tyranny finally fractured the continent, Adrian, at 23, emerged from the shadows. His family's loyalists flocked to his banner, and a war for the future began. After 7 years of bloodshed, he stood victorious, the undisputed High Lord of a new Concord. For 50 years, he ruled with a firm and judicious hand. He rebuilt the land, fostered peace, and ensured the prosperity of his people. Before his death, he spent 3 years grooming his successor, a distant nephew named Evan, ensuring a seamless transfer of power that would not trouble the common folk. Historians would call him a paragon of a ruler, insightful, farsighted, and devoid of personal sentiment, a born leader. A courtier once remarked to her family that in over a decade of managing the High Lord's meals, she never once discerned a preference, a fact she found deeply unsettling. Having arranged everything, Adrian believed he had no regrets. Nearing 80, his mind remained sharp. He had only led this last campaign himself because his best commanders had grown old and withered. He won the battle, but on the return journey, an assassin's arrow found its mark. He knew, regardless of who sent the killer, that this was his end. His heir, Evan, was a capable administrator but a poor actor. He knelt by Adrian's cot, his face contorted in a clumsy attempt at grief, but his eyes were dry. The loud, ugly sobs grated on Adrian's last moments of peace. The dying lord raised a hand and slapped his nephew across the face. He rasped that Evan was the heir apparent. With the High Lord on his deathbed, he would soon rule. Such a pathetic display was unbecoming of his station. Evan, ever the pragmatist, immediately composed himself into a mask of solemn duty. He bowed low, his voice steady, admitting his error was born of overwhelming concern. He begged his lord not to speak of death, certain he would overcome this trial. The performance was now sufficient for the history books. With his end so near, Adrian shed the last of his pretenses. He swallowed a mouthful of blood and spoke to Evan in the casual tone he once used with his generals in the field. He told him that once he was gone, Evan would be the High Lord. He wouldn't offer tiresome advice, only that he must hold the Concord together. If he failed, history would remember him for nothing else. Adrian's men, including Evan, had never seen the famously stoic ruler speak with such unguarded frankness. Those still standing dropped to their knees, a silent wave of shock passing through the command tent. The sudden silence was so profound that even Adrian, his ears ringing from blood loss, could hear shouting from outside. He raised an eyebrow, his breath catching. He asked who was causing the disturbance. Before Evan could intervene, a young soldier rushed in and knelt. He reported that they had captured the assassin. Adrian shot Evan a withering look that made the air break into a cold sweat. He then asked the soldier what the man was shouting. The soldier hesitated, then relayed that the assassin was crying out that the High Lord had murdered a loyal general, and that he was avenging Julian. Adrian couldn't help but let out a dry, bloody laugh. Julian. He coughed the blood into a handkerchief, the fabric instantly saturated. He remembered Julian once remarking that simple cotton was more practical than silk for such things. He mused aloud that Julian, on the day he died, had told him he would spend another 44 years alone. The man had been precise. Though Adrian spoke as if reminiscing, everyone in the tent began to tremble, pleading with him to calm his anger. But his sigh was genuine. He lamented that General Julian had died at 28, a prodigy lost to the world. Had he been here, Adrian would never have needed to lead this campaign himself. The assembled commanders cried out their incompetence. Adrian ignored them, turning his final instructions to Evan. He spoke of Kalen, a lifelong loyalist who was also growing old. He told Evan that whether he chose to use the old man's counsel or not, he must treat him with honor, lest Adrian's own legacy be tarnished. Evan, trembling, swore he would. Adrian found the display cloying. He informed them that his tomb was built on the commander's terrace in the Rust Peaks, not far from their current position. They would do him the service of seeing him there on their way. After a fresh chorus of pleas and apologies, Adrian gave one last order. He requested the pale obsidian urn. He told them to place it in his coffin, as it was a treasured object he wished to have with him for his final journey. Evan promised he would remember. Adrian gave them all one last, impassive look and told them to leave. He did not want his end disturbed by their noise. The great lord of the Concord was fading. His command, however, was still absolute. The men bowed 3 times and withdrew. A servant brought the urn, placing it beside him before departing with a deep, silent bow. Adrian feigned indifference, his mind replaying the triumphs of his long life. The searing pain in his chest was a distant thing, replaced by a profound sense of completion. He had accomplished his goals. He was content. His hand brushed against the cool surface of the obsidian urn, leaving a bloody fingerprint on its polished black surface. He thought that being interred with the man who secured the nation was no dishonor. He tapped his fingers against the urn, a flicker of old frustration stirring. He thought that Julian had always been stubborn, even in death, insisting on cremation. It was Julian's own willfulness that left him with only an urn, not Adrian's lack of respect. The man had always found ways to make Adrian the villain. Even now, an assassin used his name as a rallying cry. Thinking of Julian made Adrian's wounded chest ache with a sharp, familiar anger. He tapped the urn again. He had only begun to suspect him because of his reckless behavior. Recalling those days, the anger grew, a bitter feeling that all his mentorship and trust had been wasted on a wolf. His vision swam, and then darkness. Finally, he could sleep without waking. That was the High Lord's last thought. And then Adrian's eyes opened. Before him stood Julian, the young warrior in his simple white tunic and ill-fitting iron armor. Before Adrian could focus, the boy turned and walked away. The tent was filled with men who would one day become the pillars of his Concord. All of them staring at him with expressions of pure shock, as if their brilliant, stoic lord had suddenly lost his mind. Adrian looked down at his own hands. He was holding an apple sliced in 2. He remembered the first meeting. Historians wrote of it. Julian, clad in white and iron, rescued the High Lord from dire peril. The Lord, seeing him, was overcome with admiration and, in a moment of uncharacteristic spontaneity, offered him a share of his apple. A bitter taste filled Adrian's mouth. He had achieved everything, and now fate had dragged him back. Was he to conquer the continent all over again? To rule for another 50 years? What was the point? He recalled Julian's gaze just before he died, an expression of something akin to pity. Julian had said he would have to live another 44 lonely years, and that he should learn to find something interesting to do. Who pities a ruler at the pinnacle of power? It was strange. so strange that Adrian had never forgotten it. In his first life, he had never bothered to confirm if Julian had truly harbored rebellious intentions. It hadn't been necessary. Now, thinking of that eerily accurate prediction of 44 years, he suspected it was more than a coincidence. If he had to name a single regret from his past life, it was only Julian. Adrian took a bite of the apple, its sweetness chasing away the bitterness. A second life. Fine. Then he would find out the truth about his general. If Julian proved loyal this time, he would protect him to the very end and never let him die so tragically again. A big, burly commander named Luke, newly sworn to Adrian's service, finally broke the silence. He stepped forward, his voice a frank rumble, reminding his lord that the young man had been gone for some time. Adrian snapped back to the present, met by the bewildered stares of his men. It seemed this awkward story would follow him into this life as well. He felt a flash of irritation. Was Julian born just to vex him? Years of imperial decorum made it difficult to slip back into the easy camaraderie of his campaign days. He cleared his throat, then forced a smile. He remarked that it was the first time he'd seen someone simply turn and walk away in a war camp. He asked where the boy had gone. His men, sensing a return to normalcy, chuckled in relief. That young man, with his clean white tunic and silk-trimmed boots, looked more like a lost noble's son than a soldier. If not for the scavenged, ill-fitting armor, no one would have taken him for a warrior. Yet this crane among crows had rallied a group of scattered soldiers and single-handedly turned the tide of a losing battle, a display of tactical genius. Adrian continued, trying to rationalize his own strange behavior. He claimed that after being saved by such a young man, he was entitled to a small joke. He mused that the boy's thin skin and pristine clothes suggested he was no hardened veteran, but some sheltered young master from a wealthy family. His generals, following his lead, began to regard the boy with a new sense of intrigue, their admiration for their lord's perception growing. "I am from the Green Valley, not some young master," a crisp voice cut through the tent. Julian had returned with Kaelin, Adrian's most trusted advisor. He had overheard Adrian's speculation and was clearly displeased. He stated that he had studied strategy, but his origins were humble. Though Adrian often treated his men as brothers, he was still their commander. For the boy to twice show such disrespect, despite having saved them all, pricked at the pride of the other generals. Before anyone could reprimand him, Kaelin stepped in with a smooth smile, explaining that young Julian was simply direct. In these chaotic times, he argued, a person's birth mattered little compared to their skill. Julian's godlike command of the battlefield was proof enough of his worth. All eyes turned to Adrian. He knew what he had to do. In his first life, the misunderstanding with the apple, coupled with Julian's unknown background, had made him cautious. He had assigned Julian to Kaelin's care. Only after Julian proved his brilliance in battle again and again did Adrian begin to favor him, showering him with rewards. The seed of suspicion was planted much later, when he heard Julian was inquiring about his past, a line no one was meant to cross. Now Adrian looked at his men and, as he had before, began with an admission of fault. He declared that he was a master of naval warfare, but his skills on land were lacking. He had ignored their counsel and nearly led them to disaster. If not for Julian's miraculous arrival, their cause would have been lost. He expressed his deep regret for his momentary lapse in judgment and asked for the forgiveness of his brothers in arms and of Julian. He swore never to repeat his mistake. His men, moved by their lord's humility, roared their approval, dropping to one knee and proclaiming his greatness. In the midst of the passionate display, Julian suddenly laughed. Noticing the hostile glares from the other commanders, he remained composed, offering Adrian a simple bow. He acknowledged his lord's magnanimity. He then added that he was just a common man and not worthy of a formal title. If the High Lord would have him, he would serve under his command. Someone challenged him, asking why he did not kneel if he meant to pledge his service. Before Julian could respond, Adrian intervened. He said there was no need for such formalities among them. In his army, they were brothers who faced death together. He would not force a man to his knees. His men roared their approval again. Julian understood the gesture. Adrian had not only offered him a way out of an awkward situation but also extended a hand of trust. He reciprocated, bowing again and explaining. It wasn't a matter of defiance, he said, but that he had been an orphan from a young age. He had never knelt to parents, nor to the heavens, and had never bent his knee to any person. His words immediately dissolved the tension in the room. In his previous life, Adrian hadn't defended him, and Julian had reluctantly knelt. Adrian had never heard this explanation. Though Julian could be willful, he was not the type to lie about his family. Adrian believed him. It explained his mysterious background. But if he was truly an orphan, how did he know he was from the Green Valley? And where had he learned his mastery of war? The man was an enigma. The more one learned, the less one understood. Adrian found it intriguing. The conquest of the Highlands had been a grueling 9-month campaign. The region was a fortress of steep mountains and proud, independent clans. In the end, it was Julian's sudden appearance that had prevented a catastrophic defeat. Spring evenings in the Highlands were brief, the sun dipping quickly behind the peaks. As twilight painted the sky in hues of rose and violet, Adrian and Kalen walked through the bustling camp. It was a routine of theirs, a way to connect with the soldiers and discuss unresolved matters. Kalen, 5 years Adrian's senior, was his oldest and most trusted confidant, having been by his side since he was 17. He was like an older brother. Kalen, ever the pragmatist, was urging Adrian not to neglect their new prodigy. In his youth, Kalen was a handsome man who affected a certain flair, constantly holding a silver flask he never drank from. It was a gift, he claimed, from a lady he'd once known. He looked at Adrian with the earnest, paternal concern that would define him in old age. As they approached the command tent, they saw a smaller tent had been pitched beside it. A common soldier stood awkwardly at its entrance, glancing nervously at the High Lord's personal guard. Kalen had intended to offer Julian a place in his own tent, a temporary arrangement until they returned to their main base in the Riverlands. It was a calculated move to keep the boy close, vet him, and act as a buffer between him and the High Lord after their awkward first meeting. But before he could suggest it, Adrian had ordered a new tent be set up for Julian next to his own. He clearly intended to mentor the boy personally. Kalen knew his lord was praised for his ability to recognize talent, but he had never seen him take such an immediate, peculiar interest in anyone. He voiced his concern again, reminding Adrian of the need to retain this young man, for he was destined for greatness. Adrian gave a slight nod, acknowledging his words. They were now close enough to the soldier. Adrian signaled his own guards to stand down and gestured toward the man. Kalen, understanding, adopted a stern tone and asked the soldier why he was loitering instead of standing his post. The soldier, a man from Gannon's unit loaned out for odd jobs, explained with a pained expression. He reported that the new general, Julian, had demanded he find him a serving girl. With the High Lord's strict orders against disturbing the local populace, he was at a loss. Adrian's face darkened instantly. Callan frowned, his reasons different from Adrian's. Callan worried that Julian's lack of a proper upbringing had led to a flaw in his character. Adrian, however, was thinking of the rumors of promiscuity that had dogged Julian until his death. The rumors were as flimsy as the accusations of treason. All smoke, no fire. Julian had died without a wife or child, and his household staff had fiercely defended his honor after his death. But the whispers had to start somewhere, and this demand for a girl upon his arrival in camp was the very beginning. Callan, having just vouched for Julian's character, felt his face flush. He told Adrian he would go in and ask. Adrian stopped him. He looked at the soldier and asked for Julian's exact words. The soldier, still wearing his aggrieved expression, was about to elaborate when Adrian's gaze sharpened. His exact words, Adrian repeated, his voice low and cold. The soldier's bravado vanished. He dropped to his knees, his voice trembling as he recounted. Julian had wanted water for a bath. When the soldier entered, the general was in his underrobe, his hair down. What he had actually said was, "Find me someone to give me a hand with this." Adrian turned to Callan, his displeasure evident. He quietly questioned whether Gannon was still incapable of managing his men. The soldier on the ground began to knock his head against the dirt, babbling that it was his own foolish mistake and had nothing to do with his commander. Callan broke into a cold sweat and promised to investigate. Adrian waved him off and strode toward the tent. Julian had waited and waited, but no one came. He had tried to dry his long hair himself, then sat before a polished bronze mirror, attempting to tie it back. His arms ached and sweat beaded on his neck, but every attempt failed. The knot was either too loose or crooked. Frustrated by the commotion outside, he was about to go see what was happening when the tent flap was thrown open. He snatched the knife from his bedside, his long black hair tumbling loose over his white robe as he spun to face the intruder. The figure stepped into the candlelight. It was Adrian. He was no longer in his black armor, but a simple tunic of Highland green. He was unarmed and met Julian's defensive posture with an impassive stare. Recognizing him, Julian tossed the knife aside. Adrian raised an eyebrow. So he was not a threat? To drop his title and speak so familiarly on his first day showed incredible nerve. Adrian was always conscious of his pale complexion, a stark contrast to the weathered, sun-darkened skin of his men. In his past life, only Julian had been paler, a fact that had perversely pleased Adrian. Seeing him now, he was indeed fair. The clothes the guards had brought him were slightly too large, making him look younger than his 21 years. With his sharp, intelligent eyes and a natural hint of a smile at the corners of his mouth, he looked more like a scholar than the warrior who had saved them all. A scholar who, apparently, couldn't manage his own hair. Adrian walked over to the mirror. He asked calmly if he had heard correctly from the soldier outside that Julian needed a hand. Julian looked baffled. The soldier surely knew who Adrian was. Why would he involve the High Lord in such a trivial matter? He was so taken aback and so exhausted from his battle with his hair that he could only stare, speechless. Adrian had never seen this look on him before. The great general, the marquis whose presence could sway battles and captivate kings, was for once at a loss. Adrian picked up the wooden comb. He told Julian to watch and learn as he gathered the long, black strands. After his family's fall, Adrian had spent years in hiding, living a rough life where he learned to fend for himself. It was ironic that Julian, who claimed to be a commoner, lacked such a basic skill. He moved slowly, expertly combing the hair until it was smooth, then tied it with a simple cloth band into a neat, tight knot. He then undid it and handed the comb back to Julian. "Your turn." Julian tried once, twice, 3 times. Adrian watched, incredulous. He couldn't understand how a man who could command scattered troops to victory against a fortified enemy, a true military genius, could fail to learn how to tie his own hair. Yesterday's battle had been a masterclass in strategy. The Federation Emperor had long since devolved into a tyrant, sparking rebellions across the land. But then the tyrant had died, not at the hands of his enemies, but in the bed of a courtesan. His scholarly, weak-willed son took the throne, propped up by a loyal regent and caught between the 4 great noble houses that truly held power. The rebels, Adrian among them, simply changed their banners from death to the tyrant to cleanse the court and continued fighting. The Highlands had been a difficult prize, a fractured land of fierce clans who paid no heed to the Federation's appointed governor. Attacking it was a risk, but Adrian's Concord, secure in their Riverlands base, had committed to a long siege. With steady progress and the defection of a key Highland general, Luke, victory had been within their grasp. Yesterday, Adrian had pushed for a final, decisive assault. But the Highlanders, though their governor was a fool, were not without courage. An unexpected ambush had shattered the Concord's lines, encircling Adrian and his top commanders. Their only hope, Gannon, was positioned outside the trap but hesitated, paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake. Just as all seemed lost, cavalry had poured from the woods at the base of a mountain, led by a striking figure in white and iron, shouting that the Highlanders had fallen into a trap. Adrian had seized the moment, roaring that their reinforcements had arrived. His men, their despair turning to elation, had charged with renewed vigor, breaking the encirclement. The man in white had then seamlessly taken command, turning the tide and annihilating the ambushers. The victory had been decisive enough to earn Julian his generalship. Now, hearing Adrian call him a genius, Julian's eyes brightened. He smiled at his own crooked reflection in the mirror and said that while the victory was indeed impressive, the CR was not his alone. He explained that 2 factors were key. First, the Concord Army's standardized structure allowed him to bluff his way into command of scattered units. Second, Adrian's own swift reaction had been crucial. Without his immediate countercharge, Julian's small force would have been exposed as a feint and annihilated. This was the Julian Adrian knew, the god of war. He even remembered to call him High Lord. Adrian, who had developed a habit of rapping his heir on the head for his slow learning, instinctively raised a hand and lightly tapped the back of Julian's head. He chided him for speaking so casually of death. Julian, surprised by the gesture, simply held up the comb and noted that his attempt was better than before. He explained that no one had ever taught him, so how could he know? Besides, a helmet solved the problem. Adrian chuckled, remarking that one couldn't wear a helmet all day. He looked at Julian's reflection, his eyes glinting. "And you still claim you're not a young master?" Julian turned to face him, his brow furrowed. "You just smiled," he said softly, as if it were a revelation. He then explained his past. He had been taken in by a man deep in the mountains who had insisted on being his master. The man didn't bother with his own hair, let alone teach Julian. When his hair grew long, he simply cut it short. Recently, he had escaped the mountains. The woman who sold him his clothes had taken pity on him and styled his hair for him. He insisted again that he was no nobleman. Another piece of a puzzle Adrian had never seen before. He sighed, advising Julian not to speak so freely of cutting his hair. He explained the common belief that one's body was a gift from one's parents and should not be altered lightly. To his surprise, Julian didn't seem to care. He asked Adrian why he wasn't questioning him about his origins. Adrian retorted, asking if Julian would even tell him the truth if he asked. Julian considered this, then quoted Callan, "Heroes are not defined by their origins." Adrian smiled. "A fine sentiment. I can accept that. But as High Lord of the Concord, there is one thing I must ask." He looked directly into Julian's eyes. "Men are driven by ambition and desire. Julian, you have joined my army. What is it you seek?" Julian seemed relieved, as if the question was far simpler than he had anticipated. He knelt, this time on one knee. He pledged his fealty to his lord, his words carrying a weight that he knew Adrian might not yet understand. He had come for his king. Adrian helped him to his feet. His gaze fell on the simple, heavy-bladed knife on the table. Then he turned and left the tent. The next morning, Callan was making his way to the command tent when he saw Adrian emerging from his own, carrying a formidable saber and heading toward Julian's tent. Alarmed, Callan rushed forward, crying out for his lord to spare the boy. Adrian gave him a look reserved for utter fools. Callan, realizing his mistake, stammered an awkward recovery, admiring the blade and asking if Adrian was showing it off to their new young friend. Adrian explained that Julian had no proper weapon, so he was loaning him one. Callan watched him disappear into the tent, a sense of deep satisfaction washing over him. Their lord truly valued talent, willing to part with even his custom-forged blade. "What is this?" Julian, who had been wrestling with his hair again, jumped to his feet as Adrian entered. Even to an untrained eye, the weapon was extraordinary. It was a long cavalry saber, its hilt capped with a golden pommel shaped like a wyvern devouring its own tail. The grip and scabbard were a dark, burnished bronze, etched with fine, golden draconic patterns. The blade itself was long, narrow, and polished to a mirror shine, with a thick spine and a wicked, curved edge designed for a mounted warrior. It was a beautiful, lethal instrument of war. "Wyvern's tooth," Adrian said, giving it a practiced flourish before sheathing it and placing it in Julian's hands. "It's a loan." In his past life, Adrian had the saber made to improve his own reputation in land battles. But then Julian had arrived, a prodigy who left no room for Adrian to prove himself. The blade had become a decoration. Julian had asked for it once, but at the time, Adrian was consumed by suspicion over Julian's secret meetings with a tribal leader and had refused. The weapon had never truly seen battle. Julian drew the blade partially, his eyes alight with admiration. He sheathed it carefully and looked at Adrian. "Alone?" he asked, a hint of disappointment in his voice. The High Lord was being stingy. Adrian's expression soured. He gestured to the mirror. "Sit." Julian understood immediately. Grinning, he sat before the mirror, saber in hand, and held the comb out behind him. "If you insist." As Adrian began to comb the dark, fine hair, he started to quiz Julian on the current state of the continent. He described the three major powers, the fractured Northern Federation holding onto its last three territories, the nomadic windriders who had swept down from the plains to occupy the western deserts, and his own Concord holding the riverlands and the newly conquered highlands. The remaining central territories, the Rust Peaks, the Midlands, and the Green Valley, were a chaotic patchwork of independent lords and city-states. Julian listened, then asked if Adrian's next target was the Green Valley. The question was so astute it made Adrian pull the hair tie a little too tight, earning a hiss of pain from Julian. Once the knot was secure, Adrian asked him why he thought so, when conventional wisdom pointed to the Rust Peaks. Julian explained without hesitation. Attacking the Rust Peaks would risk a two-front war, as both the Federation and the Windriders would feel threatened. Furthermore, the highlands were not yet pacified. Any trouble on the front lines could spark a rebellion in their rear. The Green Valley, however, bordered their own secure territories, allowing them to attack without fear of being flanked. He spoke with an easy confidence, dismissing the complex web of alliances in the Green Valley as something that could be broken with little effort. Adrian warned him that such arrogant talk would make him enemies. Julian just smiled, patting the saber at his side. "Everyone has an opinion," he said, his tone implying that not everyone could back it up on the battlefield. "But not everyone can fight." Adrian grew serious, counseling him that making enemies so early in a new camp was a dangerous path. Julian's gaze was steady. He said that while words could be weapons, his faith was in his Lord's wisdom. A good general who fell from grace, he mused, perhaps had simply not found the right master. The words struck Adrian with the force of a physical blow, conjuring the image of a much older Julian, dressed once again in his white tunic and iron armor at a palace banquet years later. He had been a paradox, a brilliant general who shunned politics, spending his time traveling and sending bizarre gifts back to the palace. Recipes for being cakes, glass lanterns, a rabbit woven from reeds. And then, at that banquet, he had looked at Adrian and said, "Your Majesty, I have heard that arsenic has another name. They call it gossip." Adrian pushed the memory away. He asked Julian if he intended to change his ways if Adrian proved to be less than wise. Julian simply said that it wouldn't happen. He had full faith. Adrian was taken aback by his certainty. Julian explained that he served his Lord, and the opinions of others were of no concern to him. Adrian almost laughed at the naive, textbook loyalty. He asked if the books he read also mentioned that once the birds are gone, the bough is stored away. Once the cunning hare is dead, the hunting dog is cooked. Julian's response was immediate and chilling. A blade that no longer has a purpose is a danger to itself and its owner. Better to be broken and melted down than to suffer from mutual resentment. Mutual resentment. The words caught in Adrian's throat. He turned and strode from the tent. Julian followed, confused by his lord's sudden change in mood. He entered the command tent to find Kalen beaming at him, congratulating him on receiving such a fine weapon. Kalen launched into a lengthy explanation of the saber's name, explaining that the wyvern and the phoenix were both auspicious creatures in Concord lore. Julian, trying to follow, guessed a sign of a prosperous union? Kalen's smile faltered. From behind them, Luke burst into laughter. "You're an interesting one, Julian." Adrian, seated on his command chair, tapped his finger on the armrest. The tent fell silent. He called the meeting to order. Kalen laid out the situation, proposing that they leave a garrison to secure the highlands and return the main army to the riverlands for rest and refitting. Many of the generals, weary after the long campaign, agreed. But Gannon, desperate to redeem himself for his hesitation on the battlefield, argued for an immediate push into the Rust Peaks. The debate grew heated. Gannon argued they could live off the land. Julian, who had been watching silently, let out an audible laugh. Gannon exploded with rage, accusing him of insolence. Julian apologized coolly, explaining that he was merely amused that a general who had so recently been nearly overrun by a desperate enemy could speak so dismissively of rebellion. He then walked to the large sandtable map of the territories. He calmly laid out why attacking the Rust Peaks was folly and why the Green Valley was the logical choice. When Gannon challenged his knowledge, Julian replied that the High Lord himself had briefed him that morning. Gannon was stunned into silence. Julian then proceeded to outline a hypothetical campaign, explaining how, if he were leading the Windriders, he would crush the Concord's invasion. He spoke of luring them deep into the mountains, cutting their supply lines, inciting a rebellion in the highlands behind them, and finally sending assassins to take out Adrian himself. If you want to kill an army, he concluded, you kill its king. The tent was deathly quiet. Julian, realizing he had perhaps gone too far, looked at Adrian and added, "The High Lord is the pillar of the Concord. I would give my life to ensure no harm comes to him." Adrian was seething internally. He had gone to great lengths to integrate Julian smoothly, and the man had just casually outlined a plan for his assassination in front of his entire command staff. He ignored Julian and turned to Luke, asking for his opinion. Luke, ever the simple soldier, just shrugged and said he'd fight wherever his lord pointed him. Adrian then addressed Gannon. He spoke not of his failures, but of the challenges ahead. He explained that securing the Highlands was not a punishment, but a crucial task that required a strong hand. He painted a picture of the dangers of a two-front war and the ever-present threat of the Windriders. Gannon, moved and humbled by his lord's trust, swore a solemn oath to pacify the Highlands and secure the Concord's flank. After the meeting, Adrian kept Julian behind. He didn't ask about his treasonous strategizing. He asked about something else Julian had said. Kill the king? Julian feigned ignorance, claiming his knowledge of fancy phrases was limited. Adrian dryly reminded him of the apple incident and how quickly he'd understood that unspoken gesture. Julian, cornered, changed the subject, asking again about the horse he'd ridden into battle. Adrian sighed. Was he now a stable master? The horse, a massive black stallion, was a brute. While the other war horses grazed peacefully, this one lay on its side, lazily chewing the grass around it until it had created a patch of bare earth. Julian called him peerless. Adrian could hardly believe this was the same legendary warhorse he remembered from his first life, a creature known for its discipline and ferocity. Just then, a stable hand arrived with a bucket of oats. Peerless scrambled to its feet, kicked two nearby horses into the bald patches of grass he'd created, and trotted innocently to the feeding trough. The stable hand, seeing the bare patches, scolded the two innocent horses and denied them their share of oats. Adrian looked at Julian, who coughed and tried to explain that his horse wasn't usually like this. Adrian led him away from the camp, to a hidden geothermal grove he had discovered, a pocket of warmth and life in the cool highland air. An apple tree grew by a steaming spring, its branches laden with fruit. "This is where your apple came from," Adrian said. Julian looked at the tree, then at Adrian and said, "When I conquer the Green Valley for you, I'll tell you." He was making his story conditional on being given a command. As they sat in the quiet grove, a venomous snake struck from the undergrowth. In a flash of steel, both men reacted. Julian's saber severed the snake's body, and Adrian's own sword pinned its head to the ground. Adrian found himself explaining to the younger man that one must always secure the head, as even a dead snake can bite. The feast before their departure was tense. The local Highland lords were subdued, their former governor, a Federation puppet, now a guest of the Concord. Julian, sitting next to Kaelin, was bored. Adrian sent a dish of spicy venison to their table, a supposed gesture of favor. Kaelin encouraged Julian to try it. The spice hit him like a fire, and he grabbed the nearest cup to douse the flames, unknowingly downing Kaelin's strong spirit. In his first life, this feast had ended in a brawl, with Julian, slightly drunk, challenging the Highland lords to a duel and soundly beating them all. It had won him their respect but also planted seeds of future trouble. This time, Adrian had planned differently. As Julian slumped, dazed by the potent drink, Kaelin announced he was unwell. Adrian rose, saying his presence was likely stifling the mood, and offered to help escort the young general back to his tent. On the walk back, a drunk Julian was sullen. He accused Adrian of tricking him with the food. He then expressed genuine curiosity about how Kalen had swapped the cups without him noticing. Adrian explained that Kalen was a master of sleight of hand. Julian mumbled something under his breath. He was quiet for a long time, then he grabbed the hem of Adrian's tunic. He looked up, his eyes clouded with drink but holding a startling clarity. "You don't have to smile if you don't want to," he said softly. "You look fine when you don't." The words stunned Adrian into silence. The return to Riverbend, the Concord's capital, was a triumph. The city was a magnificent fortress on the banks of the great river, its towers gleaming in the sun. A grand ceremony was held on the Talon's Roost, a high platform of dark wood built for state rituals. Adrian, stripped to the waist to reveal the magnificent phoenix tattoo that covered his back, a symbol of his family's fiery rebirth, ascended the platform. The sight of it, a living emblem of their suffering and vengeance, brought the watching crowd to a fever pitch of devotion. It was a symbol of their king, of their struggle, of their undying loyalty. Julian watched from the ranks below. He saw the adoration in their eyes, but he also saw the profound isolation of the man on the platform. They were looking at the High Lord, the Phoenix, the symbol. They weren't seeing Adrian. Julian was summoned to the platform. There, before the army and the people, Adrian officially named him and Luke as generals of the Concord, bestowing upon each of them half of a commander's seal. That night, at the celebratory feast, Adrian drank heavily and retired early, leaving Julian to be swarmed by courtiers and officers. Later, in his private chambers, Adrian was confronted by Julian, who had gotten into an argument with the sycophantic Coulter clan, the family that had taken over the Riverlands after Adrian's grandfather was killed, only to switch allegiance when Adrian returned victorious. Julian was drunk again and blunt. He sat on the floor before Adrian's seat and told him that he was confusing. He said that Adrian treated him too well for a newcomer with a mysterious past. It was not the calculated kindness of a king balancing his court. It was something personal, something he couldn't understand. He told Adrian that if he had a general like himself, a man of unknown loyalties and immense talent, he would either use him or kill him. To do otherwise was to invite disaster. Adrian looked at the earnest, conflicted man before him. He made a promise. He told Julian that if he conquered the Green Valley, he could reveal whatever secrets he held. As long as he harbored no treasonous intent, his past would not matter. Their tense standoff was interrupted by a herald announcing an envoy from the Northern Federation. The envoy brought a scroll that was a masterpiece of arrogant condescension, penned by the Federation's regent. It simultaneously insulted Adrian as a disloyal traitor and demanded he march his armies north to fight the Windriders on the Federation's behalf. To cap it all, the puppet emperor had added a terrible, lovesick poem at the end, comparing himself to a spurned lover yearning for Adrian's return. Luke summed up the room's sentiment by suggesting the emperor was having his dead father's wet dreams. After the laughter died down, the envoy added that if Adrian complied, his treason would be forgiven, and he would be granted his grandfather's old title, an equal king. The rage in the room was immediate and absolute. His generals, as one, demanded to march on the Federation. Adrian's voice cut through the noise, cold and clear. He dictated a reply to Kalen. He declared that his family had been murdered by the Federation, and there could be no peace. He dismantled their claims of legitimacy, reminding them that the Concord's lineage was as ancient and noble as any. He ended with a vow that the foundations of his future capital would be consecrated with the blood of the Federation's royal line. He had the sealed reply thrown at the envoy's feet. As the terrified man scrambled to leave, Adrian called him back. He asked how long the journey to the Federation capital would take. The man stammered, 10 days with a fast horse. Adrian smiled at his generals. It is poor manners not to return a gift. He looked past Julian, his eyes landing on Luke. He asked if Luke could take the Midlands within 3 months. Luke's grin was wide. He promised he would deliver it. Then, Adrian's gaze finally settled on Julian. He asked if he, a new general with an untested army, dared to take the Green Valley for him. Julian stepped forward, a lazy, confident smile playing on his lips. He knelt on one knee. "My lord," he said, his voice ringing with challenge. "To take the Green Valley, I will only need 3 battles." A shocked silence fell over the hall. Before Kalen could protest at such bravado, Adrian threw back his head and laughed. A deep, genuine sound of delight. "Good. Then I will await your victory, General. 3 battles to conquer the Green Valley."